As someone who could do around 15 muscle-ups, I used to think they were overrated but still never let them go. So with more experimentation and examination, I've come to realize that muscle-ups offer unique benefits, and in today's video, I'll explain the context in which they're useful and why you should incorporate them regardless of your current performance. First, let's discuss what really got me reflecting on the usability of muscle-ups. Honestly, it was the New York calisthenics community. See, in the United States, they appear to be overrepresented where there's calisthenics parks all over the darn place, and each occupying a large pool of impressive athletes. Now what I've noticed from analyzing the top dogs who not only got that fed look but also filmed their workouts is that every single one of them without exception favors muscle-ups in their long-term programming. Which got me thinking, if muscle-ups were overhyped, then why were all the elites doing them? Why did they not embrace other skills or enter the straight arm world if the potential was clearly there? Why was it simply leveling up the rep count, either by sprinkling in muscle-ups before the session, during, or as a finisher? Did I get too caught up viewing them as a standalone lift, disconnected from the rest of the system, nitpicking the coordination demands, the momentum? Nuances had to be factored in. So after digesting all the material I could find and getting deeper in the trenches, I eventually understood the numerous applications. The primary factor I've noticed is how muscle-ups affect the flow of a workout. Most specifically as a form of pre-exhaust, but in a non-compromising way that doesn't take away from the net stimulus. I would compare it to a deadlift in the sense that you're stressing a ton of muscles, but in this case, you're not overly fatigued given the absolute load. The muscle up is just an introduction to your session, a nervous system priming effect, if you will, to which the stimulus is so high that regardless of not having perfect form, the growth response can be efficiently achieved without external resistance. So anyone who could do at least 3 sets of 5 is going to grow, as endurance is not even a consideration. This is all type 2 muscle fibers, high threshold motor unit recruitment. Pull-ups, you might be able to do 20 plus, dips, easily 40 plus, but muscle-ups, good luck getting over 12 to 15 reps, especially after the first set. And for the weighted version, the max you'll likely ever hit is between 25 and 45 pounds. Going beyond that is reserved for super freaks who 9 out of 10 times are street lifters that demolish weighted pull-ups with well over 4 plates. So for the average trainee, staying in the 5 to 10 rep zone with body weight only is fairly realistic. Still hard, of course, but not outside the realm of possibility by any stretch of the imagination. If you do believe that to be the case, then your standards are way off. Of course, there is a learning curve to mastering the movement pattern, learning the false grip, pulling in a C formation, maintaining rhythm, etc. But if the strength is legitimately present, it's only a matter of time before acquiring your first muscle up, after which an explosion of reps always occurs within a short time frame. I also want to point out that even if you happen to cheat a bit, with the exception of CrossFit form, which I will never condone, guess what? If you are unable to dip over the bar, aka failing, then you got your effective reps in, as there was an involuntary slowing of contraction speed, fulfilling the mechanical tension demands in the upper extreme joint angles. Basically, if technique is decent and you're generally approaching failure, you've tapped into your recovery reserves for your pushing and pulling muscles, allowing for efficient training without overloading. The muscle up is the level beyond sternum pull-ups, not to mention featuring a dip component. So now that you understand these crucial facts, how do I recommend programming muscle ups? Well, I advise using them as a mechanical drop set pre-exhaust strategy. So after failing to get over the bar, you'll immediately want to drop into pull-ups to failure. What I can guarantee is that you will not be able to hit moderate to higher reps. Even getting 5 plus can be a struggle, but that's perfectly fine for growth. Plus, the muscle ups were already effective in isolation. The benefit here is that you don't require weighted pull-ups or higher volumes to maximally stimulate your back. So you weren't able to get over the bar due to exhausting the top joint angles, which led to sternum pull-ups followed by regular, right? Your pulling strength is now shot, but guess what? Your giant set is still not over. Keep in mind, muscle-ups necessitate strong triceps to extend your body weight, and while doing the pull-ups, they were resting. So now you'll want to drop right into body weight dips. I recommend controlling the tempo, but if you want to be explosive, that's fine too. Either way, you will not get above 30 reps. That's significant, as hypertrophy research indicates that reps of 5 to 30 equalize gains, provided that failure or close to it is reached. Here, there was a minor pre-exhaust effect, as the pushing muscles were not the limiting factor in muscle-ups, though it's still enough to allow you to get more out of less weight on dips. In other words, you don't need to add weight, thereby reducing injury risk in the shoulders, also reducing internal bracing, and allowing for crisper technique without ego. So if you do 3 sets of this giant set, you can quite literally cut out a pushing and pulling compound movement given the intense condensing of workload, thus being efficient while saving time. That's one great option. Now, what if you only did straight sets of muscle-ups like 3x5? Again, pre-exhaust is present, thereby forcing a reduction in load for what is to come, though it's not in the traditional sense of, say, performing pullovers or curls followed by back training. No, the primary movers were attacked in a significant way, and now you're simply continuing with a secondary motion that is of lesser intensity. It's similar to doing belt squats after barbell back squats. The hypertrophy outcomes are not necessarily inferior, even if you're not 100% fresh. In this case, your weighted pull-ups might drop from 90 pounds to 60 pounds, or struggle to do sternum pull-ups, but you're still able to get your chin over the bar. For presses, maybe have more difficulty with the lockouts, but still put up similar numbers. Worst case, reps go from moderate to low with the same load. Or triceps become a limiting factor, which actually isn't bad for torso down lifters. You may actually want to do this on purpose. Essentially, the sheer potency of muscle-ups absolutely causes performance losses, but in the perfect amount such that the stimulus to fatigue ratios are reasonable. This can make all the difference in a bodyweight only training context, and for weighted, it's nice not having to overload all the time without fear of negatively impacting gains. Lastly, there's the strategy of finishing a workout with muscle-ups. This is reserved for true beasts, as many will fail to get even a single repetition, but if your reps are within the hypertrophy guidelines, then there will officially be nothing left inside of you after all these sets are done, which might just be one. Best of all, it's always without junk volume. The intensity itself regulates this process. So if you can't muscle up when normally you can, then you're trashed. Though if you can, there was a little bit of juice left in the tank that now is unquestionably drained out. The recovery hole has reached its limit, so now it's time to go home and rest. Next, let's talk about explosive strength development. Muscle-ups are hands down the #1 upper body explosive developer. Superior to plyo push-ups, plyo dips, plyo pull-ups, etc. It's the clean and jerk equivalent of the calisthenics world. This matters a lot, not only as a general athlete, but especially if much of your training is bodyweight based, since on many exercises, the force-velocity relationship is such that you are training within lower percentages, aka naturally yielding higher velocities. Your pound-for-pound ratios dictate this, and more often than not, you will reach higher reps with an explosive cadence. The implication being, performance can be limited by explosiveness. In truth, calisthenics is a pursuit where dynamic effort method is actually beneficial. It's not overrated like in powerlifting, since that's purely an absolute strength sport. Sure, there's a niche of street lifting, but for sub-maximal work, and I reckon this constitutes at least 20 to 40% of one's volume, improving rate of force development is only beneficial, and this is where muscle-ups come into play. For one, if you exclusively did standard rep work, that would already greatly contribute to you being more explosive on any upper body exercise, specificity aside. There's very few movements in calisthenics where you have such an extreme range of motion, but it's one gunshot that's propelling you from a dead hang to full arm extension. It's one fluid motion, and by refining it, developing your internal reserve of gunpowder, with time, you'll 100% notice that your bodyweight pull-ups are far snappier. You can more readily get past sticking points, even muscle through sternum pull-ups when you'd otherwise fail. Each rep features higher peak forces, and you're training this ability in an efficient, simple way. One movement to cover most of your bases. There's no need to hit dynamic effort presses and dead stop pulls like Pendlay rows, or even use accommodating resistance, even though that's definitely effective and is best done on pull-ups and dips, which is a totally other video. But what's cool is that whether you're doing high rep muscle-ups or not, the explosive factors always feature, inescapable unless intentionally being controlled as a variation. Therefore, if you cannot do higher reps or you don't want to, that's fine. You may perform 8 to 10 sets of 3, 12 sets of 2, even sets of 1 with 30 to 60 second rest intervals. please refer to Perlipin's chart. The fact is, each rep challenges maximum explosiveness. And remember, flawless form is not a must, but should be better with this high set, low rep approach. Keeping straight legs is, of course, preferred, but that can be a progression for the long term. You're still training rate of force development, and we all start somewhere. Lastly, muscle-ups are a great relative strength tester and proxy for size. So are pull-ups and dips, but not to the same extent, in the sense that you won't experience as much of a drop-off when it comes to gaining body weight, unless you become immensely fat or put on a good 30 pounds or more. But with muscle-ups, even gaining 10 pounds can have a detrimental impact on total rep count. They're very similar to one-arm pull-ups in that regard. Like at 181 pounds, you may be able to do 5 reps, but at 165, about 0 to 1, which is not an over-exaggeration in the slightest. Whereas for pull-ups, you might do 20 reps in a lean state and a minimum 15 in a bulk state. Your 1 rep max may also be within a 10 to 20 pound gap. Then for dips, the opposite effect may occur. It's quite common to become far stronger, which mainly has to do with the intramuscular fat and leverages. For some reason, this is a thing when analyzing many presses. It's the same with benching, and some would even argue overhead press. Now, I don't know exactly why this also applies to dips, because you're not physically stopping the bar with a thicker torso that reduces range of motion, but there's something happening beyond what we physically see that aids in strength. So when cutting weight, it's likely to lose dip strength up until a certain point, whereas for pull-ups, you will typically gain. Now, how do muscle-ups fall into this discussion? Well, if you're able to at least maintain your numbers when bulking, even if it's a low rep count, this means you're getting significantly stronger. Yeah, not just a little bit, significantly. This is an excellent test of what you're really made of and determines if your programming is on point. Because muscle-ups balances out the relative strength cons of pull-ups and dips into one hybrid motion. Again, assuming technical proficiency from the start. This is what I've noticed in myself, as all my training is documented, and I believe in bulking and cutting. Throughout the years, I have seen my muscle-up performance fluctuate between 12 and 15% body fat, though in recent times, I finally managed to retain and match my lean numbers while being over 20 pounds heavier. And when you see me on the bar, the gains freaking show, much more than in the pull-up ratios. In other words, those who keep muscle-up performance when moving up a weight class will 100% of the time be noticeably bigger, to which others will point it out. And it's also why heavyweight calisthenics athletes who excel at muscle-ups are to be respected, because there's a good chance their lean body mass is freaking high. So here's my point. The muscle-up is the bridging movement that connects relative strength and hypertrophy in calisthenics athletes. So, if you witness a 200-pound man repping muscle-ups, it's almost impossible for him not to have tremendous muscle, even comparable to many natties who lift. And again, this just goes to show that when you bulk, that is your way to vest. You don't even need weighted muscle-ups, because just a minor amount of fat gain is challenging enough. And if you care about optimizing hypertrophy, you'll be in a caloric surplus anyway. So muscle-ups are an opportunistic movement. And I don't care if you use bands to get into position, or maybe find the ring version with the false grip to be easier. Personally, I don't, but whatever allows you to train it and get better over time across different weight classes definitely holds long-term value. And I think this perfectly explains my initial observations regarding the calisthenics purists who swear by muscle-ups. This is one of the main reasons why. The longer you do them, the harder they get, which is ironically amazing from a stimulus standpoint. So that's about it, guys. Muscle-ups are indeed worth your time, so if you're able to do them, definitely reconsider, because you'll experience unique gains that other lifters aren't getting. With that said, hope you enjoyed the video. Let's hear your feedback on the exercise down below. Do you like muscle-ups? What's your max rep count? Let's share, and I'll talk to you all next time.